Okay, so welcome to the panel. These are not just auctioneers. I'm gonna have you guys grab the microphone and introduce yourself, where you're at in the business, and maybe even how long you've been in the business.
My name's Brian Hansen, co-owner, operator of Fort Pierre Livestock. I guess raised in Fort Pierre and been at the sale barn since I was a kid growing up, and been working with my father ever since. I don't know exactly how many years, Kyle.
Probably long enough, right?
Well, it's been a bit.
Nice.
I guess I've been an RCAF member since the inception, and been a part of the board for several years, and was a past president before Gerald. So that's my story.
Thank you. Justin.
I'm Justin Oberling. My dad, Jamie, and I own and operate Adams County Livestock Buyers, mainly buying fat cattle. So I've been in the auction deal as long as I can walk, basically. Went to sales with Dad and kind of been in it my whole life, basically. Been an RCAF member for several years now, and on the board, having a great time with it. And we're kind of on the most western part of Illinois is kind of where our operation is.
Hey, just a little bit, Justin, right quick. Tell them kind of what you guys do just a little bit as far as buying cattle and receiving cattle, what you do.
Yeah, so my grandpa started it. We buy fat cattle, so we're basically an agent. A plant we have a long-standing relationship with a smaller fat cattle plant, but we also get orders from about every plant in the country, basically. So we're in sales, buying cattle, getting loads put together, getting them delivered to the packer. There's really one or two in the state of Illinois, and really it covers Missouri. There's really not too many left doing that. But then we'll also order by feeder cattle and kind of background cattle on our own farms too. So.
Excellent. Good.
Yep.
Good. Shane.
My name is Shane Kotzer. I'm one of the two owners at Bassett Livestock Auction. We specialize in selling feeder cattle, yearlings, bred cows. I'm also a cow-calf operator and a yearling guy myself. I've been a member of RCAF, I don't know, probably 18 years or something for quite some time.
No offense, but you don't even look 18 years old. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Jim, how long have you been in the business?
Hi, my name is Jim Herzog. We built Mocan Livestock Market in 1992, so we're in our 29th year there at the facility. We also, I don't need to elaborate. I told you what we done earlier, so you all know about me.
Excellent. So you guys in the crowd, try to think of some questions you want to ask these guys, because I'm going to try to rip through some general questions that I have, and then we'd love to take some questions from the audience, okay? So my first question for you is, are you seeing fewer buyers in your seats, okay? And I don't mean just maybe hit each sector just a little bit, like calves, yearlings, and maybe even, the coal market. So just each deal just briefly.
Well, as the numbers have shown from some of the charts that Bill has shown you, and the number of independent producers has obviously went down over the past 25, 30 years. It really started a downward trend after NAFTA, of course. You go back 30 years ago, and the people used to make fun of us. They say it looked like a Iowa and Minnesota convention in the parking lot because all the license plates. Well, there is some technology involved that has changed that. Cattle USA, which is broadcasting this today as well, has made it very convenient for a lot of our independent feeders that are comfortable enough to do it, and that's a little bit of a learning curve as well. Not everybody's willing to just hit the button on the mouse and buy, $50,000 to $100,000 worth of livestock at the click of a button. But as they get used to it and they know that you treat them right, it seems to be working pretty well. But also the order buyers, of course, handle a certain amount of farmer feeders, and then you also have your order buyers that are buying for the corporate feed yards. On your calves, I would say that's still more of the independent feeders, just because a lot of the big corporate yards haven't necessarily figured out how to take a ball and calf and keep him alive. But I guess as far as more or less buyers, it's it's kind of disheartening when you call the number. You know, you get, I've got a list. I go through my list of weekly calls. I also go through and call a lot of guys from the years before. Different people like to buy the same people's cattle. And you get a hold of them on the phone and they say, well, golly, I'm sure glad you called, but you can go ahead and quit calling. We're not feeding cattle anymore. So that pulls at your heart pretty good. And if we don't get something turned around, pretty soon you'll be down to very few. The only thing worse than that is when you call them up to see if they're interested in buying cattle and they say, well, he died. And that's always an awkward call. But I guess it's part of life. Was there a second part to your question?
Cows. I'm curious about cold cow market.
Well, that's a lot of fun, you know, when you have two buyers. We get American Food Group and JBS. JBS may randomly just step out of the market for 2 to 3, 4 weeks. So then you got one. And the only thing that really puts any legitimacy into your cow market is that there's guys around buying feeding cows. And at least they'll keep your cow market honest. But it's not much fun when you're down to two. And some days it's one. And it used to be, at any given time, there used to be from 6 to 10 different plants. Well, Rapid City was one of them. You know, used to send a buyer every week to the cow sale. There was multiple plants. And you had you might not have liked the price, but at least you knew you had a legitimate auction when you had 8 different plants representing your cow market. And today you got 2, and then some guys feeding a few cattle or a few guys will buy cows and try to hang them and do this or that. But for the most part, you're really down to 2 cow buyers.
Excellent. So Justin, this might be a little tougher question for you. So maybe you can approach, a lot of us probably don't know a lot of what you do. So maybe approach it from the selling the cattle end.
We cover a lot of, basically every sale in Illinois. It'd be the Western Illinois, Northern Illinois, Southern Illinois, and then we cover some sales in Missouri. Basically every sale, it's us and 1 or 2 plants there. And one thing it's basically just what Brian said, but what we've seen in the last 2-3 years especially is a shift in the feeder cattle. And the barns in Illinois, you know, we've lost, I'd say 80-85% of our farmer feeders. And so there's a lot less people to buy them in those smaller auctions. And so when a competitive barn is 100 miles away, they're trucking them farther because the corporates are there, basically, the bigger operations. So there's been a huge shift, especially in the last 3 years, in feeder supply and where them cattle are going. I'm getting a lot of calls to haul them further. And guys that call me, you know, even on our fat cattle side, you can really tell in Illinois, 3 years ago, an average sale, a weekly sale, would be 250, 300 fat cattle, and a lot of times be closer to 400. Last year and this year, if you have 200 head in one sale in a week, every other week, it's a big run. It's been hovering around 80 to 150. So it's really shrinking fast. You can really tell it. And also on the buyer side of the feeder cattle, there's hardly, I could count on one hand people my age getting into it. You know, so the operations buying those cattle are getting older, and there's getting to be fewer, even in the big sales that I help with. They're in Kingdom City, Missouri. Guys that have those orders, they're in their upper 60s and 70s. And I'm looking around, and you got 3,500 cattle to sell, and there's 6 of them to buy them all. Who's going to replace them? And, you know, if the board's down the limit that day, then it really throws a curveball in things.
Good job. Shane, what are you seeing?
A lot of the same as Brian. I tell you, people, I've been there 8 years, but the Bassett barbecue sale is something, no matter where I go, they talk about it all over the country. They watch it. And I have guys say, you never used to be able to even get in the door there. There was standing room only. Now you can go in, sit down wherever you want. Part of that is just what Brian said. A lot of them guys have exited the business, but order buyers have took over and do buy more and more of the cattle. We're fortunate enough to be one of the bigger barns down in our part of the world, and we do get attention we don't have a the feeder cattle market is, how that works is not broken. The fat cattle side of it is what's broken. So I'm going to pick on Eric Nelson here. I see him in the crowd, and I've done this at other ones where I say, you know, the guy from Iowa comes out to Bassett Livestock Auction to buy his calves, and he's got to competitively bid against, on any given week, could be hundreds. I mean, with the internet on, there's always numerous people on the internet bidding, plus a lot of order buyers and some farmer feeders in there. So he's got to bid against his cattle to get them bought. And he might say if he's buying heifers, he's bidding against guys that are maybe wanting to breed them. So you're bidding against that. You're bidding against yearling guys that are in there trying to buy them to spay them, as run them as yearlings. And then all the feed yards and the corporate feed yards are represented with a card there. So anyway, Eric gets them cattle bought. He takes them back to Iowa, and he feeds them for a long time. And when he gets ready to sell them, you know how many people are interested in buying them from him? Not very damn many. And that's the problem. It's the fat cattle market. That's the problem. We have got to get more competition in the fat cattle market.
Excellent.
I can attest that, you know, basically the same thing these gentlemen are saying. At our market, a lot of the guys that backgrounded cattle throughout the years, they disappeared. And, you know, we have one big buyer there. He'll background, 15,000, 20,000 head of balling calves, and he'll buy them, background them, and then feed them. So he's a real asset to our market. But, you know, when corporate's in, they push him out because they can run them all up. You know, they're here a while back, 6-weight steers were $1.40. Corporate steps in, you know, they go to $1.65 or $1.70. Well, he can't even get in the race, and he's still going to feed these cattle, but he doesn't have the deal on the back end. And that's what makes it hard for them guys to compete with them. Well, first of all, they can't compete with them. They cannot compete with them at all. On our butcher cow side, you guys were talking about, we're very fortunate. We've got 5 butcher cow buyers in our market, and it's really competitive. We've got a plant south of us. We have a plant north of us that just opened. They're killing like 300 cows. So there again, more plants, more competition. These are on a larger scale. Some of our cows go to Pennsylvania, some go to Texas, Wisconsin. I mean, they're there to buy the butcher cows. And, you know, it makes it for a really good market. And the nice thing about it, none of them guys like each other. So there's no brother-in-law going on, you know, and that makes it really nice. We don't have to try to keep anything broke up between them. They just competitively bid on the cattle, unlike what the fat cattle, the way they're being sold.
Hey, Jim, while you got that microphone, we'll just start down there with you on my next question. Have you ever seen or feeling any form of retaliation? I'm really curious about yours because you're starting to expand in some other areas in your business, not just your sale barn. Have you ever been threatened or seen any form of retaliation?
Other than the boys from Chicago, whenever we cost them some money on that trade deal. But no, the response has been really good from everybody. You know, we haven't had any problems with anybody, none whatsoever. And everybody's happy and glad to see it in our community, except for one of our neighbors.
Shane, have you seen any form of any kind?
I have not on, you know, I as well have got, on a Sunday watching my kids play basketball, got a call from Chicago, wanted to know if the weather that week was going to affect our big sale, how many cattle we were going to get in. So they do pay attention to us, but I have not seen seen it other than the fact that I see some of these small feed yards that are not willing to stand up and complain because they are afraid. They don't have a lot of places to sell them anyway, and they don't want to make somebody mad. So, yeah, I guess you could say we do see it.
Justin.
Maybe not so much retaliation, but it's a form of it. Especially in the last 2 years, our plants won't tell us a market on a Monday. So Mondays we're just going off last week's market. When you have fat cattle in auction being sold at noon on Monday, it might be Wednesday before they might tell us a market, so we know where we're at. And then Thursday they might say, well, how many loads they want. So, and then they want them delivered Sunday and Monday. So the last 2 years, that's gotten to be a a big problem. Call some other plants out west. We got, bigger runs in the, say, winter or spring. They just won't even give you a bid, as a fat cattle buyer, especially if we get one plant that only take 3, 4, 5 loads and we can send them 12. It gets really challenging to find another place when you're in auctions with us and another buyer. So that's become a big problem here lately for us in west central Illinois and parts of Missouri.
As far as retaliation goes, I don't know as I could really point out anything recently, but I'll promise you there was a time there really was, and
We might call it punishment more so than retaliation.
Well, you can call it what you like, but they had an order and wouldn't use it, so I guess however you want to call that. And that was back to more in the inception of RCAF, in the early days of RCAF, and the push to get country of origin labeling, and then some of the mergers that RCAF fought against. There were some players that didn't like what RCAF was doing, and Fort Pierre Livestock was pushing them pretty publicly, and therefore, well, by golly, we'll show you. And I guess we just had to live in the bed we made. But I guess we've been long enough without them now. We just found new.
It feels good.
Found a new comforter, but not so much anymore. No.
So Brian, I'm gonna start with you. How about any trends in the cattle business? Maybe like just any general trends within the industry that you see that maybe you like, some trends that maybe you don't like that are going on within your business or in the industry as a whole.
Well, I don't know what you'd call trends, but when you look back 30 years ago, and if somebody had a 5-weight steer coming off the cow in October, nobody hardly believed it. And now we see them in the end of August. But I guess one trend that's in our area, which doesn't have to do with marketing them, but used to be everybody calved kind of the 1st of March or the middle of March, and now everybody started calving the 10th of April, the 15th of April, some of them the 1st of May, and it was always kind of comical. I pulled into a fella's place. A lot of you remember Johnny Smith. I rode thousands of miles with Johnny Smith back in the day, and Johnny told me when we were pulling in, he said, these guys calve early. They got big cattle. I was pretty young, and he was kind of just, kind of telling you the way things were going to be. And boy, we got in, and these cattle were not looking like they were explained to me. I mean, he thought these cattle weighed 9-something, and they were weighing more like 750 when we're looking over the fence. And Johnny said, well, what's going on here? He said, this doesn't look right. And that old boy, he said, the last of the boys went to college a year ago. And he said, it just about killed me and the missus calving there. He said, so we moved. They were from like the later part of February calving, and they moved it clear to about the 1st of May. And he said he had a little bit of that German, Russian kind of broken talk, and he said, John, they ain't near this big, but he said there's a lot more of them.
That's good. That's very good. That's good. Same question. Maybe a trend that you see that you do like, or maybe a trend that you don't like as going on in the industry, the cattle industry itself. And I'm talking within the business of competition and just your own business.
Yeah, especially the last couple of years, I help with Callaway Livestock Center there on Mondays, and I couldn't tell you, board looks good on a Friday. Buyers think it'll be steady to maybe a little better, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, get cattle lined up, get hauled there Friday and Saturday, and you're there Sunday. Here comes Monday, some black swan event happens, and then a couple of them don't show up or something like that, or they're really ratcheting back what they can give for them and what they can hedge them that day or whatever. And that was a really bad thing happening. That really sapped a lot of value out of the feeder cattle there that day. Been seeing a lot more of that happen. That's something that's been very frustrating. A lot of guys in our area like to row crop in the spring and fall. they're busy getting crops out, and they all want to calve in the wintertime. But it kind of, in our area, yearlings kind of get short come fall, which is good for the guys to have them, I guess. But there is times throughout the year where a lot of new crop calves hit the market, and it gets a little harder to place them, especially in our area. You know, you get snow and rain and mud, and it gets harder to place those cattle. But yeah, it's definitely on the fat cattle side. That's really changing things up in a not so good a way.
Shane?
I guess trend I see a lot, like Brian said. I mean, the calves are getting bigger. But one thing, we used to be, almost all of them in our part of the world were born from about 1st of March or the 20th of February through April, and a couple, the last few years, some of them storms that come through, people have backed that up, and there's getting to be more and more fall cows in our part of the world, and that's what I run personally. And I know they take way more feed and everything, but there's sure as a heck of a lot more live ones when it's said and done, and it makes our job a lot easier. I think in the fall, from where we are, everywhere, but all the way up through Montana, it seemed like they just all want to come to town at one time, and it's always a tough time to sell. And so by spreading that out, just last Wednesday, we sold spayed heifers weighing 8.5 for as many dollars per 100 as we could have got for them weighing 5 last fall. It's, if you can just spread that market out and not have them all coming at one time, it's a great thing.
In the state of Missouri, I think the average cow herd's around 27 head. It's totally different than up here, So the biggest trend that we've seen down there, when we built our facility in 1992, we were in the #1 cow-calf county in the state of Missouri. And now I believe Bates County is number 11. 2012 rolled around. We had a drought. Corn hit $8. There's more government money out there for the farmers you can shake a stick at, and they plowed it all up. And it's kind of funny. One of my customers, we were selling his cows there. It was like January. And it was a mean old January, and it was muddy and wet and cold. And it's on Thursday morning. He just starts hauling them in, the older cows, calves, and everything. He said, I'm done. He said, I'm selling them all. And I said, why are you doing that, Darrell? He said, you know how many soybeans I had die in the grain bin this year? He said, not one. He said, I've lost several of these cows with this weather. But so that's a big trend in our area is they plowed it up. Another good thing, though, the cattlemen that are left are really dialed in, and they really work hard on their genetics to try to make them as good as what the cattle are up here. And we've got a lot of really good cattle now in Missouri that's helped a lot on the marketing side.
Yeah, that's a great answer, because I definitely agree with the genetics in the southeast, and the east has really come around. So my next question is kind of a bizarre question, but so the new administration has announced that PNS is going to have more power. Have you guys seen more power coming at you over the last, I guess, whatever, since he announced it, maybe even the last couple months? Yeah, Jim, we'll start with you, because I don't know if you touched a lot about the regs on your new facilities, but how about within your business?
First of all, I don't believe anything the new administration says, period. I mean, totally disgusted with it. It's a disgrace for our country, but no, the regulations for a plant, they haven't changed. PNS, they really don't regulate us. I mean, they regulate the livestock market, and they're always going after the guy that might have bounced a check or doesn't have a bond that bought cattle for 3 different guys, and they paid for them, instead of going after the people that they need to go after. And, they really don't do their job. It's just plain and simple, just typical of most government agencies. They're just spinning their wheels all the time and spending our money. And, I'm tired of it. I told my kids whenever, I'm going to tell this out loud, just the way it is. I told my kids whenever Trump got beat, I said there's 3 things to keep in order. I said, God is first, your family's number 2, and number 3, figure out every way you can to beat the government out of a tax dollar, because they're going to squander it off, and I promise you that's right.
We have not. I've heard now that they're supposed to have more teeth. We've not seen anything of them since. they just don't have much clout or never have had. I tell you what, if you own one of them, an auction barn, you have to, or you work there, you are supposed to pay for your stock in 24 hours afterwards. It has to be paid for. Boy, if you screw up on that, they're all over you. They don't have a gun or nothing, but they're there to find you. But the Packers can do what they do, and they completely just turn their head at all of it. So,
Justin.
We sold our market probably, 12, 13, 14 years ago now, but we kind of moved in full-time order buying, what my grandpa started. But the only changes we've seen, especially in the last couple of years, they'll send us, P&S will send us a form, and I think it's about 2 pages, and they want to know exactly how many head we're buying and how many dollars they are and what our projected revenue is. And they're getting pretty picky about it. So that's kind of the changes we've seen in the last year or two.
Well, I guess we really haven't seen anything from the P&S lately, but quite a lot of years ago when they first started the video auctions, and of course the video auctions, they weigh them cattle at the elevator, and so Dad called him up one day and said, hey, we're having a little trouble with our scale. He said, can we just weigh these cattle down the street here at the elevator and sell them? And they said, well, yeah, emergency deal, I guess. You got to do what you got to do. And he said, well, he said, actually, I just thought maybe we'd just do that all the time. Of course, Dad was trying to prove a point, with this elevator has different kind of scale than a livestock market. And so the P&S's answer to that was, no, you can't weigh them at the elevator every week. And the next week, we had P&S there and wrote down everything we sold, and we had to go bring them all back through and reweigh them to check our scale. So, yeah, we haven't really had much to say to them for a lot of years. It kind of leave it lie. So that's all I've got.
Can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
It's been 5 years ago we had a P&S auditor came down. She was a real nice lady, but I've kind of learned how to deal with them, and we were visiting there before she started the audit, and she was telling me it's going to take 4 days. She's going to be there, 4 nights, and she was going to stay in a little old hotel south of us, and she told me what the hotel was, and I just backed away from her. I said, oh my gosh. I said, you stayed there last night? And she said, oh yeah, I stayed there. And I said, you've got bed bugs in. I said, they've been trying to get them out of there forever. And her eyes got about that big around, and I can tell you the audit lasted a day and a half, and she was gone.
I'll tell you what, if you have to admit, cell barn operators are probably the most ornery people out there. True?
Our beef checkoff guy was there, and we're the secretary for beef checkoff, and we don't get paid a penny. But we make a mistake and didn't collect, they fine us or whatever. So he showed up here about it was during the summer, last summer I guess it was, and Hudson and Katie, my grandkids, are around there because my daughter-in-law works there in the barn. So Katie told me he was coming. It was hot. I told her, I said, turn the heater on. I said, crank it up. And then I said, get Hudson and Harper in the hallway in there. And by noon, he started at 9, and by noon he said, I'm out of here. He said, I can't take this anymore. And so that's how I handle them people.
Excellent. So listen, I think we'll have time for 2 or 3 questions. So if 2 or 3 people want to come up for a question, I'm going to ask them one question in between. But if you got a question, come on up, stand here. We'll get to you. My next question is, so this is a trick question, guys. You guys ready for this? When someone says, man, all these coal cows selling, our prices should get really, really good this fall. What is your response? What's going to be your response to that question? I'm just kind of curious. Dang, Brian, it should be really good this fall. This drought and all these calves selling and so forth. This ought to be good.
Well, I'll tell you what, Kyle. That is a great business model. That is great supply and demand. When you sell out your cows, you have less feeders down the line, less fats. That is excellent. That's supply and demand. But it's a little tough to do that supply and demand model when you got an unlimited supply of a cheaper product that comes right in on the boat or right in on the wheel coming out of Canada and gets put right in our same retail line with a product to the USA. So I'd say that's my opinion, that's our number one 5014, in my opinion, is number 2, but country of origin labeling, mandatory country of origin labeling is
Yes,
my
sir.
number 1.
Just in my area, right quick, just in my area, there's a lot of Mexican calves come to my area. Shane, or Justin.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing as Brian and agree with him 110%. In our area, when cows are
Hold on, I'm gonna interrupt you because I'm a guy telling you, gosh, it's gonna be really good this fall because all these cows have been liquidating and our numbers are way down. What's gonna be your answer to me? I'm curious.
I wouldn't bet on it. That fat cattle thing's got to be addressed and fixed first. Country of origin labeling, at least a minimum negotiated cash trade. Doesn't matter how short we get of cattle in this country if they just keep importing. They'll just import that much more. Just like Brian said, it don't matter. I've told guys in our area, they've said the same thing, and each one of them, they just turn ghost white when you tell them that, and then they start doing their research. I said, it don't matter. We can have 5 head left in this country. They can import the rest.
These guys get it. This is media training day. Shane, you're up next.
It's exactly the same. That was the big 2 things I had to talk about, just in order that these 2 gentlemen just mentioned. MCOOL, mandatory cash. But if you're asking me, I've been telling them it's going to be better. I just come from Cheyenne, Wyoming. We had a video sale there Monday and Tuesday. We're reps for Western also. We do some of that in the summertime. And the calves are $100 and some a head higher than we've sold them the last 2 years. So it is going to be better. But exactly what they said, it's not going to get real good when they can just ship something in a heck of a lot cheaper. They won't allow it to get good. It's going to be better than it was for a while, but we got to address the fat cattle market and the mandatory country origin labeling.
Jim, I know I'm gonna love your answer already because you're old enough that, to put this nicely, you're just gonna shoot them right in the heart. Go for it.
Well, I tell you what, for as far as the butcher cow market, it fell $25 in the last week in our area. Just because there's more cows coming in from the north, they yanked $25 out. You couldn't give Gibbon a cow last week. I mean, they were totally out of the market, and it's a shame what they're doing. But until we get the corporates and the packers broke up, nothing's going to change. They hedge everything. 100%. And whenever, we're seeing them April fats, I'm not sure where they are today. I hadn't looked 138 or maybe 40, wherever they're at. But when we roll around to April, I promise you it won't be near that high because they're going to pull that board back because they're all hedged. And they're going to be buying the fats for 120 or wherever they hedge them things at. The board is broken. The packers have broken the board. The packers control it. It's the largest gambling casino in the world. I promise you it is. Until that's broken up, and they just make the rules. Hell, they change them daily if they need to fit them. I mean, you can't beat them at their own game. You cannot beat them. Anybody says they've made money trading on the board, if they're not up there in Chicago sitting there, they're lying to you because very few people do. But the corporates can. They can hedge and I don't think they ever pull a hedge off. They just write it up, send in millions or billions, wherever they need. When it comes time, they pull it all back and get it all back. But until the board's straightened out, we've got a major problem. It's not just the packers, it's the board that they control.
Excellent. We got time for some questions, so anybody else come on up.
Yeah, is this on?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to embarrass Brian a little here if I might, but, I bought a piece of ground in '87, and, that market kind of was coming back at that time. And I took my old Shelley coal cows into a sale barn close to me, and I got 68 cents a pound for them. And in 19, I took some old Shelley cows down to Brian, we got 52 cents. And that's what these imports are doing to us. And I think people forget to count that Shelley old coal cow that we sell, and that's a big part of your income. And I just wanted to point that out. So.
Really, Bill, you couldn't have sold the 58-cent cows in faith?
So any other questions right quick?
I can come to you with a microphone too if anybody else has a question for these guys.
Oh, got one right there.
I wonder why it is that livestock auction barns are the most endangered species in this market, right next to us cattle producers, because that market goes away. Y'all's jobs go away just like ours. Why isn't more? How is it, or why is it that we can't get more auction barn owners on our side?
I would say that we're all too busy, honestly. I mean, we're either running the country or doing something. But for as far as joining RCAF you're talking about and being members, I can't answer that. I mean, I'm tickled to death to be a member, and I'm proud that I am, and I don't know. I cannot answer that. You all got a good reason for that?
I don't know that I got a reason. The closest ones up and down the highway to us are all members of RCAF, I guess.
Well, it depends on what markets you talk to, but there's a certain amount of them that have enough pressure that they're afraid to. They're afraid that if they, and they might be what you'd call a closet RCAF member. They might send a little money and might be a member, but they don't advertise it, and they don't have rollovers. They don't do things of that nature, simply because the pressure they get from their buyers. If they, well, you got to realize, especially you get further south, you get out of the northern territories, and you start running into a lot more of your, i.e., NCBA oriented, those types of cattle feeders. A lot of you start getting to your markets that are mostly all connected cattle feedlots that are buying cattle, and if they start getting involved with an organization such as this one, pretty soon they got to figure out where they're going to go with that week's sale, because there's no buyers sitting there. So that would be.
Second that.
That was my husband, and I'm just going to add to it. I wanted to commend you guys for being here and representing. I know some of you guys are producers, but it is frustrating. We're from Kansas, and there's many auction barns that aren't a voice. I know a lot of you guys have probably heard Steve Stratford. I'm so thankful for that guy. He's been a very, very loud vocal voice, and I tell you what, he has put himself on the radar. And support these guys. If you live by them, if you have to drive a few more miles, go to these auction barns, because it really stinks to have auction barns. And we do have one, and we've actually made some changes. But when they aren't standing for the producer and we're watching, I mean, I have two little boys, they're 8 and 10, they're running around here. If you saw them, they're with grandparents right now. But I have been to the biggest auction barn in Kansas, watched a dispersal sale of very high quality, closed herd, Angus herd, and the youngest person bidding was probably in their upper 60s. We don't have any, I mean, we were there and we had one other friend that bought some heifers. Other than that, nobody younger bid on the cattle. And so we have a much larger issue on top of, once we get this fixed, we're losing a whole generation that's not even there to take over if we do save this. And so I hope that we do keep fighting. I think the messages has been great this week, but I hope that we can find some plans of action to get the youth back involved here too. I mean, really, there's not many 30-year-olds. I'm kind of middle-aged now, I guess. I don't know how that happens, but I wish we saw more 20, 30-year-olds here,
I'm seeing some new faces today, and it is excellent to see some young people out here. So that's awesome.
I'd like to follow up one follow-up with that. It seems like a long time ago, but really 2013, 2014 wasn't that long ago, Kyle. But even in that 2 to 3 year stretch from about 2013, 2012 it started, 2013, 14, 15, when we saw the best cattle market that we'd ever seen in our lives, there were people coming home. They might have been working in town, they might have been working out of state, but they were coming back. There was actually money in the livestock market, in the industry, and you did see people move back home. We just got to figure out how to do that again. And one way that you can tell is Johnny Smith said, by golly, in 2014, he said, I had to pay income tax. I said, well, what are you talking about? He said, well, no ranchers pay income tax. They just buy enough stuff to offset anything and roll on. He said, you're making money in cattle when you actually have to pay income tax, he said.
Got another one back there.
I'm just going to ask one thing. Like you say, I have many friends that are kind of our age. There's not many that can just do farming and cattle full time, but if they could, they would. And so like you say, if we can get this industry back, they're going to quit that town job that's, just making a living and providing for their kids. So I think that was a great answer. Thank you.
I was wondering, as far as livestock barn operators, what would happen on the beef checkoff if you guys said, we're not gonna collect it?
Man, that's a good question, because I was actually going to propose that question. Are you guys hearing some grumblings from some of your customers, and what would happen if they all decided they didn't want, they told you not to take it out of their check?
In South Dakota, before we did the petition, we as several auction markets, we got together, and that was exactly what we didn't necessarily say we weren't going to collect it. We were still going to collect it and put it in like an escrow account. So we had an attorney do some background work for us and found out we were not inventing the wheel. It had been done before. And the outcome before, I believe it was a Kansas market, if I remember right. I'd have to check. So they had held somewhere around 80 or 90,000.
I remember.
Dollars
It was
worth.
an individual, actually.
And then it ended up going to court. They got fined. They had to pay the 90,000 plus about another 120,000 in fines. And that's when we said, well, maybe we'll skip that and try a referendum. But
Are you hearing some grumblings, just right quick? Are you hearing some grumblings from folks that, when they pick up their check, damn, I wish you'd not have to, just take that out of my check?
Yeah, I've heard several. But like I give them an example. What happened to me? I was buying fat cattle in the country. We'd weigh them. I'd pay the producer for them, and then it was kind of during a 2 or 3 week time frame. I was busy, shorthanded. Hurry up, get them weighed. Weather was bad, and I forgot to take checkoff dollars out. And fast forward a year and a half later, we get audited, and we had to pay all that back after a week of them being in our office, and I just forgot to take it out. And we got compounding interest off every dollar, and it turned into a $6,000 bill that we had to pay.
Yeah, I'll get your attention.
And it was just an accident. I mean, it was several years ago, and I just plumb forgot to take it out, but that's what happened to us.
I think we've got time for one more question.
I was just going to comment real quick on the beef checkoff. What about all the cattle that are being sold on Facebook and other sites like that? They're not collecting a penny. And, they need to be out. If they collected that money, they wouldn't be hounding us near as bad. I mean, there's a lot of dollars. I don't know how many cattle are sold on sites like that, but hundreds of thousands that they're not collecting, they're not even policing. They don't care because they've got us to do their work for them. I'd like to find out, because I'd be the first one in the state of Missouri to do it. You all pay my fine, I'll start doing it next week.
On that deal, quick. So West River, South Dakota, and most of western Nebraska is all in a brand area. So it doesn't make any difference whether you sell them on Facebook or what. They have to be brand inspected before they're sent, and the brand inspector is going to collect the check off. I mean, that automatically happens. But if you get east of us about 50 miles, that's where the line is. They can do whatever the heck they want because there's no brand inspector there. Nobody pays it. Nobody pays the check off east of the line.
We got a question right here.
Well, it's actually just a comment. I want to tie into what this lady said. I think we can take a clue from the LGBTQ community and what have you. I think we need to start, just as producers, I think we need to start using our money to support livestock markets that are RCAF producers. I will tell you, my closest livestock sale barn has had 2 cattle trace meetings. They have made a big deal about the fact that they have all the readers and everything, and I can tell you that not a hoof of my cattle have gone through there since I found that out. And so I haven't shopped at Walmart in 17 years, so you have to, we as producers have to start doing our part. And I realize maybe we're not big, and I mean, I'm not a big producer. I got 184 mama cows. I'm not huge compared to most of you people in here, but what we do, we have to, because we know how it feels to be pinched. And so what we have to do is what we can do at our level to empower the people that are helping us.
Absolutely. And that's a good point as I walk over here. Go to your auction market, go to that owner and ask them if they're an RCAF member. If it means that much to you that you want to do business with a market that's going to support RCAF, go ask them.
Yeah, I was wondering, I assume all you guys belong to LMA. Is that something, as far as the checkoff, you guys being responsible for that, is that something LMA can start campaigning, lobbying against, get you guys away from being the secretaries?
So actually, LMA started a referendum, or a petition for a referendum vote back in, I believe, 2000. At that time, LMA was, I guess I would call a little more on our side. To be friendly, and I am an LMA member, and I work with them on different issues. But when it came to this deal, we tried to get them involved, and they were a no-go. They said that they had expended enough resources on it 20 years ago. They weren't going to do it again, and a little of that has to do with the direction of their leadership is a little different than it was 20 years ago. For example, they are neutral on mandatory country of origin labeling, so that makes it just a little tough to deal with at times.
Hey, just right quick, I personally, as a board member and a member of RCAF, I'd like to thank you at Fort Pierre, of course, for everything you guys do. Shane and Jim, all the way from Missouri. Shane, just right quick, was this your first year of rollover at Bassett or no? I don't even know. Let me just put you on the spot with this one.
I don't know whether it was it seemed like we had one a while back, but
We really appreciate you doing it. Tell us what was going through your head maybe the day of the rollover and leading up to it, and would you do it again?
I was wondering how we were going to get that many cattle sorted and sold at the highest dollar is really what I was worried about, probably more,
Right, okay.
more than anything. I probably didn't put a lot of thought into that.
Would you encourage other sale barns to do it?
Oh, absolutely. It's a great thing. I've seen for years where Brian and I was talking about this morning, John Smith, I mean, we read about it for years and always see all the auctions they've had up there. It's a great thing. They're in a part of the world where I think there's probably a few more members there, and it's something we need to keep pushing in our part of the world.
Don't you think people appreciate you standing up? I mean, to be a conviction.
Absolutely.
One thing I would like to add on the rollover note, if any of you folks are going to go home and try to get your local market to do a rollover, I will tell you up front, it will help if you do a little of the legwork for them. I will tell you from our rollover auction at Fort Pierre, there's obviously people in the seats that are selling cattle that day that are going to give some money. And frankly, it's a lot easier for them to say, well, just hold that out of my check than it is to write a check. Yep. And I'll tell you a little something about a deduction. The best one is to never show it as income. Just saying. Check with your accountant. If it's held off as a sale expense, it was never shown as income. So it is the cleanest, best write-off there is. But at a sale when they're selling cattle is the best time to get a producer to donate. But a lot of the donations that come in for ours are from local businesses, from restaurants to parts stores, your banks obviously, or of course they get hit up for every 4-H project to the motorcycle race, you know. I mean, they get hit up for everything, kind of a little like a sale barn. Hit them up. Say, hey, you're an ag bank. We don't want $200. I want $2,000. Start high. We've got banks that give $3,000 in Fort Pierre. Banks that give $2,500. Banks that give $15, $12, down to $500. We get all the banks involved. And obviously your implement dealerships, to your parts stores, to your feed stores, anything that you can, it's best to approach any business that does business with ag. Especially ranching, obviously, cattle feeders. Those are your best prospects to try to get money gathered. But if you do that ahead of time, they don't have to be at the auction. You as a producer can be in the seats, and you've got your card there, and you bid this guy in for $250, you bid this guy in for $500 or $1,000 or whatever you can get, and then you announce their name across, they'll announce it back, gives them some publicity. So I'd encourage you to try to work that for them. That will sure make your auction turn out better for any first-time barns.
Excellent.
Absolutely. Don't just go lay it on the sale barn, because they do probably have they would be dealing with, who knows, on the day 30 to 60 consigners plus the buyers and all that. If you could go out and help get a few of them, just like Brian said, get a few of them banks or the local implement to say, I'll give this right up front, do a little of that legwork to help, it would sure make the process go a lot better.
So look, our time's up. Do me a favor, give these guys a big round of applause. Their boldness to be here is worth $1 million.